We call for a full investigation.
Tonight, growing outrage after Israeli forces kill 7 aid workers in Gaza. Why experts are concerned the region is on the brink of a larger war. Plus,
people were holding onto the doors because everything was falling off.
A powerful earthquake rattles Taiwan, killing several and injuring hundreds. Crews work to untangle survivors from the debris. And
we are going to get this done.
The race to clean up the mangled wreckage from Baltimore's bridge collapse. All this and more on Faith Nation. The world demanding answers after an Israeli strike accidentally targeted aid workers. Welcome to Faith Nation, everyone. From the CBN News headquarters in Virginia Beach, I'm Wendy Griffith, in tonight for John and Jenna. Well, Israel has taken responsibility for the attack, saying a misidentification led to Monday's tragic killing of 7 aid workers in Gaza. The incident has triggered international backlash and calls for investigations. At least 2 humanitarian groups have suspended operations in the Strip due to safety fears. CBN's White House correspondent Abigail Robertson joins us now with the very latest. Abigail.
Well, Wendy, World Central Kitchen has released the names and photos of the 7 aid workers who were accidentally killed in the strike, and they include one dual citizen of the U.S. and Canada, as well as workers from the U.K., Poland, Australia, and Palestine. Now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Tuesday that Israel deeply regrets the tragic incident, and the Israeli military acknowledged they made a grave mistake in striking the aid convoy that was traveling in clearly marked cars and had coordinated its movements with the Israeli military in advance. World Central Kitchen is halting its operations in Gaza due to the ongoing danger, and other aid organizations are following suit, elevating an already dire risk of famine and starvation in the region.
Abby, are we hearing anything from the White House? How are they responding to this attack?
Well, President Biden released a statement saying Israel's investigation into the incident must be swift, comprehensive, transparent, and hold people accountable. But for now, the White House says there is no change in their Israeli policy. Take a look.
He's outraged. He's heartbroken. And we also laid out what we want to see and the conversations that we have been having. But it also lifts up the importance of having that hostage deal, getting that done, getting to a ceasefire, getting that humanitarian aid, making sure that those hostages come home to their loved ones. So there's a lot of work to be done. We're going to continue to do that work. But I think that statement made it loud and clear where the president stands. Okay, Karen.
And as we approach the November election, progressive Democrats are growing concerned Biden's handling of the Israel war and humanitarian crisis in Gaza could cost Democrats in 2024, leading to a growing number of Democratic lawmakers urging President Biden to break away from supporting Netanyahu.
Abigail, what is the administration saying about the other suspected Israeli airstrike conducted this week on the Iranian embassy in Damascus, Syria?
Well, this strike killed 3 generals in Iran's Quds force and 4 other officers. It's a huge blow to Iran's military, and it has raised concerns in the Middle East that the war between Hamas and Israel could expand as Iran vowed retaliation. Now, the State Department says the United States had no involvement in the strike, and they are warning Iran not to strike U.S. personnel in the region in response. And as far as the growing concerns of escalation, the State Department says they have been concerned about escalation since October 7th. And so far, Israel has not taken responsibility for the attack, but Iran is warning they will take countermeasures and reciprocate when they want. Wendy.
All right, Abby, thank you so much for that report. We appreciate it. Well, from tensions in the Middle East to Russia's war against Ukraine, NATO foreign ministers are in Belgium this week for high-stakes talks. There, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg is expected to propose $100 billion in funding for Ukraine over the next 5 years.
Support Ukraine should be less dependent on short-term voluntary offers and more dependent on long-term NATO commitments. By doing that, we will give Ukraine what they need, and that is long-term, predictable, robust support. And that will also send a message to Moscow that they cannot wait us out.
Even while Ukraine's allies work to send that message to Moscow, across Europe, Russia is seen as the greatest and most urgent threat facing the continent. And after a recent warning from German intelligence, the alliance is now scrambling to prepare for a direct military confrontation with Moscow. George Thomas reports from London.
Dr. Simon Anglem, a leading British military expert and professor at the Department of War Studies at King's College in London, worries that his country's armed forces are not ready for a war with Russia.
What keeps me awake at night is the possibility of direct attacks on the United Kingdom, possibly by missiles or long-range bombers.
A February report by Parliamentary found Britain running low on its stockpile of weapons, munitions, tanks and other fighting equipment. Plus, the military is losing personnel faster than they can recruit them. It comes amid warnings that NATO countries may have just 3 years to prepare for all-out war with Russia.
We have virtually no defence against missile attack. We have limited numbers of fighters to defend ourselves from bombers. This will need to be rectified if we're going to continue to take the stance that we do against Russia.
Since Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine,
we are combat ready. We can deter, and if deterrence fails, we are ready to fight.
NATO militaries have been getting ready to fight.
All stations, focus a little bit.
In January, the alliance launched Steadfast Defender 24, its largest military exercise since the Cold War.
The first part of Steadfast Defender 2024 is about getting things across the Atlantic. And then the second part is about trying to get stuff, once it's arrived, over to the central and eastern states.
More than 90,000 troops from all 32 NATO allies are taking part in the exercise. 50 naval assets will move across Europe. More than 80 air platforms and 1,000+ combat vehicles are also being deployed.
This is undertaken near the Russian border, let's call it, near the frontier line, to show the East, show Moscow that NATO means business.
Of the 90,000 troops taking part in NATO's steadfast defense, the British government here has deployed some 20,000 soldiers from the Royal Navy, British Army and Royal Air Force. The exercise will take place primarily along NATO's eastern flank, with particular focus on countries like Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania.
I think of all the NATO states, they are the ones who are the most aware of the potential threat that they face, and they have been for 30 years.
The exercise will test the alliance on its speed in moving massive numbers of troops and equipment across the lines to defend that eastern flank. Swedish and Finnish Marines conducted amphibious operations from a U.S. Navy warship high above the Arctic Circle, honing their readiness skills.
This needs a lot of coordination so that we can work together, operate together in this complex environment.
Steadfast Defender is expected to last through May, aimed at showing that the alliance can defend all of its territory up to its borders with Russia. George Thomas, CBN News, London.
Thanks, George. And now to the violent earthquake in Taiwan. At least 9 people dead and more than 900 are injured in what's being called the strongest quake to hit the region in 25 years. Shocking footage captured the moment it began. Look at this. People seen running for their lives as entire buildings crumble into piles of metal and concrete. The 7.4 magnitude quake also damaged local highways and roads.
I was in the office at that time and people were holding on to the doors because everything was falling off. And we wanted to get to the doorways in case something collapsed.
Wow. Wow. Rescuers are hunting for victims who may be trapped under collapsed buildings. Authorities warn dangerous aftershocks could ripple across the nation for several more days. Well, Stargazers across the nation chase down next week's solar eclipse, how it's bringing big business to communities in its path. Five days and counting until a number of Americans can experience a once-in-a-lifetime total eclipse. The moon will block the sun for a number of minutes in areas located inside the so-called zone of totality. More than a dozen states in that zone are preparing for unprecedented crowds, as you can imagine, and hoping to make some quick cash in the process. Tara Mergener has more from Washington.
On April 8th, this total solar eclipse will cross a significant portion of the country, drawing an estimated 4 million people waiting to witness the path of totality phenomenon. This rare event is projected to inject about $1 billion into local economies.
We talk about it every day.
Anticipation is high.
A little more. There it is.
This solar spectacle is expected to last as long as 4+ minutes, leading to darkness and a temperature drop of about 10 degrees.
I don't know if there are words to describe the level of excitement I have.
Millions of other stargazers are excited too, with hundreds of schools closing early that day.
Just to allow everyone to enjoy the eclipse however they feel is best for them.
Towns from Texas to New Hampshire hoping for an economic boost as visitors travel to get a front row seat.
There's approximately 10,000 rooms available. To the best of our knowledge, that most of those are sold out.
Businesses big and small expect to see large crowds.
And then we're going to have an eclipse martini for the adults, and then we also have eclipse ice cream, which is going to be kind of dark.
I got a bunch of tables like this that'll be out front. We'll go get them today and set them up with umbrellas.
With more than 50,000 flights on Thursday alone, the FAA expects this to be the busiest week of the spring.
I think many communities are also going to see tourists unlike the numbers that they've ever seen before.
The Myers family is finally making their long-planned 1,500-mile trek from Florida to Dallas.
We booked our room back in the fall, maybe October, November.
Chances are they won't be disappointed. The last time a total solar eclipse was visible in the lower 48 states happened in 2017. And scientists say this one should be even more spectacular. The next total solar eclipse that will be visible in the U.S. will not happen for another 20 years. In Washington, I'm Tara Mergener, CBN News.
Thanks, Tara. I remember the 2017 one. We were all standing outside. Well, even if you won't be in the path of totality across America, you'll still get to see a partial eclipse. Earlier today, my colleague Caitlin Burke spoke with NASA scientist Dr. Nicolene Weil about what to expect.
Dr. Weil, why is a total solar eclipse something that draws national attention?
So the eclipse is going to be amazing. An eclipse happens when the moon comes between us here on the Earth and the sun and blocks out the sunlight. A total solar eclipse happens when the moon comes between us and the sun and totally blocks out the main body of the sun. And those people in the path of totality will get to see the corona, the outer atmosphere of the sun peeking around the moon. And that's going to be so amazing. It's going to feel colder, it's going to be darker, and it's just going to be amazing to get to see.
How is this eclipse different from the one in 2017?
So the 2017 eclipse, that one was different from this one in a couple of different ways. The first one is this path of totality goes over more where people live already. So there's just going to be more people who are already in the path of totality who could literally just step out their front door to participate in this event than in the 2017 eclipse. Also, because of the geometry of the moon between us and the sun, this eclipse lasts a little bit longer. Totality lasts about 4.5 minutes for this eclipse. In 2017, totality only lasted a couple of minutes. And the third thing is the sun is going through this magnetic activity peak right now. It has 11-year cycles where it gets intense magnetic activity and then less magnetic activity. 2017 was a time period where it had less activity. Right now we're in a peak of activity, so that magnetic fields are complex, they're tangling up, and they're having explosions on the sun. And we're going to get to see that complexity during the eclipse.
Building on that, what are people like yourself looking for during this eclipse?
So I study the corona. I study that outer atmosphere of the sun that we're going to get to see during totality. And I'm so excited to get to see that with my own eyes. But also NASA has dedicated experiments to watch the corona during the eclipse to really understand the details of the corona, the details of the energy that's being released there. Also, we have experiments looking at the Earth and how Earth's atmosphere is responding to this decrease in sunlight coming from the sun.
You mentioned what people on the ground might experience, but what about those who got special plane tickets to view the eclipse from the air?
So it totally depends on exactly where those flights are going. But in principle, you could see the total phase of the eclipse if the airplane is at the right place at the right time. You'll also get to look down, though, on the Earth and get to see maybe the shadow of the moon as it comes across the Earth, and it'll definitely look like sunset because of that decrease in sunlight from the moon blocking it out.
Why is it so important for people not to look directly at the eclipse? And does that also include taking pictures?
It's never safe to look directly at the sun. That's always true. And the eclipse is just same rules apply. But there are some safe ways to view the partial phases of the eclipse. The first is if you have special eclipse viewers. So these are special glasses that have special filters across the front. Then it is safe to look at the sun through these, and you can look at all the partial phases of the eclipse where the moon has partially blocked out the sun. You can also use these filters on your smartphone to take pictures through. That will work. If you have a regular camera, though, or binoculars, then you need to buy the special filters that are fitted for those. During totality, though, it is safe to look directly at the eclipse because the moon has blocked out the main body of the very, very bright sun.
All right, Dr. Nicolene Vial, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Caitlin. Still ahead, while all eyes are still on Gaza, experts say Iran is secretly working around the clock to build a nuclear weapon. Stay with us. The world's focus remains on Gaza, but some experts say Iran is using the international distraction as a cover to develop its nuclear weapons program. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell has the story.
As Israel fights Hamas in the south and prepares for a potentially greater conflict with Hezbollah in the north, Iran remains a major player behind the chaos. That could be due to the regime trying to distract the world from what's happening with the country's nuclear program.
Whether it is a formal strategy or it's just happening that way, it's absolutely a danger. Iran threw out the nuclear inspectors, 8 most important ones, in September 2023. They tripled the speed of enriching uranium for most of the last few months. Between 60% and 20% enriched uranium.
Experts believe the regime has enough uranium to make up to 8 nuclear weapons.
They could enrich to 90% weaponized uranium in like a week or two. Israel, the United States, the world is very distracted by Hamas, Hezbollah, and the rest of the world by Ukraine. So could Iran try to break out now? Yeah.
Iran claims it successfully launched 3 satellites earlier this year. Bob sees this as especially significant in terms of weapons delivery systems.
The technology they use for launching satellites can also be used potentially for nuclear weapons, in particular ICBMs, which can go a lot further. As far as we know, they're not there yet, but we have to keep a very strong eye on that too.
Rafael Grossi, chief of the International Atomic Energy Agency, recently reported that Iran continues to prevent access to inspectors and video recorded by cameras at key nuclear sites.
We must move forward in the clarification of the many aspects that require this from Iran. All countries that have signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty are not supposed to have nuclear weapons in any form. This is forbidden in international law.
Bob says Iran is effectively blinding the world to the country's nuclear progress.
It's a very dangerous situation, and it's problematic. The IAEA Board of Governors, has basically decided to do nothing about it, certainly not referring it to the UN Security Council.
Bob maintains sanctions from the original 2015 nuclear deal could be reintroduced through a snapback arrangement but this provision has a time limit.
If the United States and the 3 key European countries want to snap back, they can snap it back, and the entire UN Security Council would need to enforce it. When you get to October 2025, January 2026, so many of the limits on Iran fall apart that Israel, and I hope the United States, will need to make a decision to do something potentially militarily with Iran if it does not radically reduce where its nuclear program is today.
Retired General Amir Avivi, head of the Israel Defense Security Forum, sees Iran's nuclear threat in a global context.
If Israel has to go to all full-scale war with Lebanon, this is our chance also to hit Iran and all the nuclear sites. So really, if the U.S. wants to avoid a regional and maybe global war, it needs to show leadership and really deter Iran and Hezbollah. This is the only way to stabilize the Middle East.
Avivi also uses more of a moral perspective to describe Israel's war with Iran's proxies.
It's a war between darkness and light, between evil and good. We're fighting the whole Western society's war against extremism, against people who really want to destroy our way of living.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Coming up, a New York City cafe that serves more than coffee and pastries. Next on Faith Nation. Finally tonight, a New York City cafe has made it their mission to serve hope and purpose. Welcome to Café Joyeux. It's French. The name is French for joyful. I'm not sure I'm saying it right, but it's a nonprofit staffed by employees with autism and Down syndrome. The European shop just opened a New York City location, offering job opportunities to those ready to put in a hard day's work.
I'm really good at making lattes, hot and cold. And I love drinking them too. People who have autism are capable of anything. We want to work. We want to show that we are amazing.
You guys are amazing, and it looks like the coffee is amazing. I'd love to visit. Everything sold in the cafe is helping people with special needs. See you next time.